A home is supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where a child is safe, loved, and protected. But behind the closed doors of a house in Garden City, North Wales, that sanctuary became a place of unimaginable pain. This is a case that tore a family apart and baffled investigators. A 2-year-old boy was dead, and the only suspects were the people meant to protect him, his own grandparents. The story of Ethan Ives Griffiths isn't just a chronicle of a crime. It's a look into a family's darkest secrets, leading to a murder trial where a mother and her parents stood in the dock, each blaming the other. How did things go so wrong? And who was truly responsible for the death of a little boy with his whole life ahead of him? This is the full story of the crime and trial of Ethan Griffiths. In the summer of 2021, the house belonging to Michael and Carrie Ives was full. Their adult daughter, Shannon Ives, had moved back in with her young children, including her 2-year-old son, Ethan. From the street, they looked like any other multi-generational family living under one roof. But inside, something far more sinister was unfolding. During the trial, Shannon would paint a bleak picture of her own childhood, one she said was filled with abuse from her parents. She described being terrified of her father, Michael Ives, a fear that cast a long shadow over the tragedy to come. Ethan was, by all accounts, a bubbly little kid. But as that summer went on, something started to change. The prosecution would later claim that Ethan was subjected to what they called casual brutality. Shannon testified that her parents would punish Ethan by making him stand with his hands on his head for up to 2 hours. She claimed she saw them shake Ethan in anger more than once, and she recalled a moment just weeks before he died, when her father allegedly put his hand in Ethan's mouth and shook him. The court heard that Shannon and her children felt trapped. She testified she had nowhere else to go, and that her parents stopped her when she tried to leave. She also claimed they coached her to lie to social services, making up a story that her mother had COVID to keep them from visiting. The lie worked, keeping authorities away, and leaving Ethan isolated in a house that was becoming his prison. In court, all 3 adults, Michael, Carrie, and Shannon, would eventually admit they had neglected Ethan. But the question of who delivered the final fatal injury would become the heart of a devastating legal fight. For weeks, Ethan's health spiraled. He was losing weight at a frightening speed, something his grandfather Michael later admitted he saw. He claimed he only mentioned it to Shannon, telling her to make a doctor's appointment. That appointment was never made. Instead, Ethan was left to suffer, his pain and misery growing worse each day. August 14, 2021, was the day everything fell apart. Ethan was downstairs in the living room with his grandparents, Michael and Carrie Ives. His mother, Shannon, was upstairs on the phone. What happened next in that living room is a truth only known to those who were there, and their stories would soon clash violently. The result, however, was undeniable. Ethan collapsed. He was unconscious. His small body had given out after a catastrophic head injury. Yet for some reason, no one called for help right away. A shocking 18 to 20 minutes went by before his grandmother, Carrie, finally dialed 999. A leading pediatric neurosurgeon would later testify that while the outcome for Ethan was likely sealed regardless of the delay, the fact that they waited so long to call for an ambulance spoke volumes. When paramedics finally got there, they walked into a horrific scene. The child they found wasn't just hurt. He was, in their own words, emaciated with a sunken chest. At the hospital, the staff was just as stunned. One nurse said, "Ethan looked like a 90-year-old man because he was so thin. He was severely underweight and dehydrated, and his body was a map of his suffering, covered in 40 different injuries. For 2 days, doctors at Alder Hey Children's Hospital fought to save him, even performing a desperate operation to relieve the swelling on his brain. But the damage was just too severe. On August 16, 2021, 2-year-old Ethan Ives Griffiths died. His death wasn't an accident. Medical experts were certain. The injury that killed him was inflicted on purpose, with Ethan's death now being treated as a murder. Police and medical experts started to piece together the awful puzzle of his final weeks. Their findings were stark. Multiple experts testified that Ethan's injuries were caused by abusive head trauma, consistent with what's often called shaken baby syndrome. They argued the fatal injury came from a deliberate act of force, maybe violent shaking, a blow from a hand or fist, or both. Critically, these experts said the injury would have happened just minutes before he collapsed, placing the blame squarely on the 2 people who were with him, his grandparents. The investigation found more than just medical evidence. Police recovered CCTV footage from a camera outside the grandparents' home. The images shown to the jury were hard to watch. In at least one clip, Michael Ives was seen carrying his grandson, not like a child, but by the top of his arm, like a bag. When he was shown this footage in court, Michael said he was ashamed and disgusted with himself, and he admitted that he had been cruel and neglectful. But while he admitted to neglect, he and his wife, Carrie, fiercely denied murder. Their story about that day never changed. Nothing happened. They told the jury that Ethan's legs had just turned to jelly, and he collapsed for no reason. This claim completely contradicted what the prosecution called overwhelming expert evidence, that something violent had happened to the little boy moments before he lost consciousness. The battle lines were drawn. The police had proof of long-term neglect, a pattern of cruelty, and a deliberate, fatal injury. Now, it was up to the Crown Prosecution Service to prove who did it. The investigation pointed straight at the people inside that house, but the story was anything but simple, with family members turning on each other. Before we get into the courtroom battle that pitted a daughter against her parents, if you find this kind of in-depth, true crime analysis valuable, take a moment to subscribe. It really helps us continue to bring these important stories to light. The trial at Mold Crown Court lasted more than 5 weeks and became a stage for family betrayal. In the dock sat Michael Ives, Carrie Ives, and their daughter Shannon Ives. The grandparents were charged with murder and child cruelty. Shannon faced charges for child cruelty and for causing or allowing her son's death. All 3 pleaded not guilty. The prosecutor, Caroline Rees KC, laid out a damning story. She told the jury that Ethan had been subjected to casual brutality and that his grandparents murdered him in those final moments before he collapsed. Rees argued that Michael and Carrie then made a pact of silence to hide what they'd done, lying from the very start to protect each other. What other motive could there be to lie about the death of their own grandson? She asked the jury. The prosecution admitted they couldn't prove exactly what happened in the room, but said the only 2 people who could have done it were the grandparents, and they were choosing to stay silent. The defense was a fractured, desperate mess of blame. Michael and Carrie pointed the finger right back at their daughter. Carrie Ives testified that she'd seen Shannon smack Ethan up the head. Michael Ives, while admitting he'd been cruel in how he handled the boy, denied delivering the fatal blow. His lawyer argued the evidence just wasn't strong enough to prove he was the one who did it. Then, in a stunning turn, Shannon Ives took the stand to testify against her own parents. When the prosecutor asked why she called them Michael and Carrie instead of Mom and Dad, she replied, "Because of what they did to my son." She told the court about a life of being controlled and abused by her parents, saying she was too scared to stand up to them or get help. She admitted she had let her son down by not getting him medical care, but she put the blame for the abuse and the murder squarely on her parents. She told the jury she assumed it was Michael or possibly Kerry who caused the bruises on her son. She described her father as an angry man and claimed she saw him shake Ethan on the very day he collapsed. Lawyers for the grandparents fought back, trying to paint Shannon as a liar who was only trying to save herself. The jury was left with a tangled web of accusations and denials, a family imploding under the weight of its own secrets, and the massive task of sorting through the lies to find the truth. After more than 5 weeks of gut-wrenching evidence, the trial came to an end. The jury of 12 was given their final instructions by Mr. Justice Griffiths. On the morning of Monday, July 14, 2025, they retired to begin their deliberations. The judge told them to take all the time you want, recognizing just how complex and distressing the case was. As of the making of this video, the jury is still deliberating. The fates of Michael, Kerry, and Shannon Ives hang in the balance, locked away in a jury room at Mold Crown Court. The community, and the rest of the country, now waits for a verdict in a case that has shocked and horrified everyone who has heard it. No matter the outcome, the impact of Ethan's death will remain. This case has shined a harsh light on the reality of child abuse that can happen inside a family. It's raised hard questions about cycles of abuse, a parent's duty, and whether our child protection systems are working. How could a child become so hurt and malnourished without anyone stepping in? Why were all the warning signs missed? These are questions that will haunt this community long after the verdicts are in. The tragedy of Ethan Griffiths is a brutal reminder of our duty to protect the most vulnerable among us, and to make sure no other child ever has to suffer in silence the way he did. The story of Ethan Ives Griffiths is one of catastrophic failure, a failure of family, of protection, and of basic human decency. A 2-year-old boy, once described as bubbly and full of life, was reduced to a state of fear and starvation, his body covered in bruises before his life was violently taken from him. The trial revealed a family at war with itself, where care and love had been replaced by cruelty, neglect, and a toxic blame game. As we wait for the jury's decision, the heartbreaking truth doesn't change. A little boy is gone forever, his future stolen by the very people who were supposed to keep him safe. The case of Ethan Griffiths is a terrible reminder of the darkness that can hide behind closed doors. What are your thoughts on this tragic case? Share them respectfully in the comments below. Thank you for watching.